The neon advertisements flickered across the rain-slicked streets of Crimson District, painting everything in shades of pink and electric blue. Dane Merrick hunched his shoulders against the artificial downpour, cursing the station's environmental systems for the 100th time. 3 years running freight between outer colonies and the Nexus hub, and he still couldn't get used to the scheduled precipitation that kept the station's hydroponics functioning. He just finished unloading a cargo of medical supplies. The credits already transferred to his account. Legitimate work paid less than the smuggling runs he used to take. But it let him sleep better at night, mostly. The scream cut through the sound of synthetic rain like a blade. Dane's hand moved to the plasma pistol at his hip before conscious thought caught up with instinct. His boots splashed through puddles as he sprinted toward the sound. Muscle memory from his military days taking over, despite the years since his discharge. The alley opened into a loading area, behind one of the district's luxury hotels. 3 figures in dark tactical gear surrounded a woman whose violet skin seemed to glow in the dim light. Even from a distance, Dane recognized the elaborate silver threading in her gown, the jeweled clips in her long black hair. Valerian nobility didn't usually venture this far into the station's commercial sectors. Lady Desha, one of the men growled, his weapon trained on her chest. House Volmer has been very patient. Your family's debts must be settled. The woman, Desha, drew herself up despite the fear Dane could see in her luminous amber eyes. My house owes nothing to Volmer. Those contracts were obtained through fraud, and you know it. The magistrate disagrees. The man's finger tightened on the trigger. Then Lord Volmer has grown tired of waiting for payment. If your family won't surrender the mining rights to the Tessera Nebula, we'll have to take something else of value. Dane moved before he could talk himself out of it. His first shot took the speaker's weapon from his hand in a shower of sparks. His second and third shots forced the other 2 to dive for cover behind cargo containers. Station security is already on their way, Dane called out, bluffing. I'd suggest you 3 find somewhere else to be. The leader clutched his burned hand, his face twisted with rage. This isn't over, human. House Volmer doesn't forget. Yeah. Dane kept his weapon trained on them as they retreated into the shadows. Add it to my tab? He waited until their footsteps faded before turning to the woman. Up close, she was even more striking than he'd first thought. Her violet skin held an inner luminescence, and the crystalline markings that traced patterns along her cheekbones caught the light like trapped stars. But it was her eyes that held him, amber and bright with a mixture of relief and something else he couldn't quite identify. You're hurt. Dane holstered his weapon and approached slowly, hands visible. A dark stain was spreading across her left side where the ornate gown had been torn. I'm fine. She pressed a hand to the wound, but her voice wavered. I don't need assistance from someone like you. Dane stopped in his tracks. Someone like me? You mean someone who just saved your life? Her crystalline markings flared brighter, a sign of embarrassment he'd learned from dealing with Valerian traders. I meant no offense. It's simply that Valerians don't. We aren't accustomed to being touched by other species. Right. Dane took a step back. Well, your grace or your ladyship or whatever, you're bleeding pretty badly. So you can either let this lowly human help you, or you can try to make it back to wherever you're staying before you pass out. Your choice. Desha swayed slightly, and Dane saw the exact moment pride lost to pragmatism. Very well, but I must insist on proper protocols. No unnecessary contact. Wouldn't dream of it. Dane pulled out his emergency medkit, kneeling at a respectful distance. I'm going to need to see the wound to treat it. She hesitated, then slowly moved her hand away. The cut was deep, made by some kind of blade rather than energy weapon. Dane's jaw tightened. They'd gotten close enough to use a knife, which meant this ambush had been better planned than he'd thought. This is going to sting, he warned, pulling out antiseptic solution. The wound needs to be cleaned before I can seal it. Vesha nodded stiffly, turning her face away. Dane worked as quickly and efficiently as possible, trying to ignore how smooth her skin felt beneath his fingers, how she trembled slightly at his touch. Whether from pain or something else, he couldn't tell. "You're surprisingly gentle," she said quietly, "for someone who shoots first and asks questions later." "I asked plenty of questions. They just weren't in a listening mood." Dane applied synthetic tissue sealant to the wound, watching it knit the edges together. "There, you'll need proper medical attention, but that should hold until you can get to your ship or hotel or whatever." Vesha looked down at the repair work, her expression unreadable. "I have no ship here. I came to the station for a diplomatic summit, staying at the Grand Celestial Hotel, but clearly House Volmir's agents had been monitoring my movements." "Then you can't go back there." Dane stood, offering her his hand without thinking. She stared at it like he'd offered her a live snake. "Sorry, forgot about the whole touching thing." To his surprise, she took his hand, letting him help her to her feet. The contact lasted only a moment, but he felt the jolt of it straight through his chest. Her eyes widened slightly, and he knew she'd felt it too. "Thank you," she said, pulling away quickly. "But I must return to my quarters. My family will be concerned. Your family will find you dead in an alley if Volmir's people catch up with you again." Dane gestured toward the main street. "Look, I've got a place not far from here. Nothing fancy, but it's safe and off the grid. You can lay low there until we figure out what to do." "Absolutely not." Her crystalline markings flared again. "I cannot possibly stay with a strange human male. The impropriety alone would." She swayed again, and this time Dane caught her before she could fall. She stiffened in his arms, but he could feel her growing weaker. "The impropriety of being alive?" He asked. "Listen, Your Grace, I don't care about your protocols or your prejudices. Those men were planning to kidnap or kill you, and they will try again. Now you can come with me and live to complain about it later, or you can walk away and take your chances." "What's it going to be?" Vesha looked up at him, her amber eyes searching his face. Whatever she saw there must have satisfied her, because she gave a small, reluctant nod. "Very well, but I want your word as a—" "What were you, military?" "Former lieutenant, Terran Coalition Navy. Your word as a former officer that you will behave with honor." Dane felt a smile tug at his lips. "You have my word, Lady Vesha." "Scout's honor." "I don't know what a scout is." "I'll explain later. Come on, we need to move before they come back with friends." He offered his arm this time, a more formal gesture of support. After a moment's hesitation, she took it, letting him guide her out of the alley. The rain had stopped, leaving the streets glistening under the neon lights. Vesha stumbled slightly, and Dane instinctively moved closer to steady her. "I should hate this," she murmured, more to herself than to him. "Being touched by a human. Everything I was taught says it should revolt me. But—" Dane kept them moving through the crowds, alert for any sign of pursuit, but it doesn't. She sounded genuinely confused by this revelation. "In fact, it's rather. I don't understand it." Dane understood it perfectly. He just wasn't ready to admit it yet, not even to himself. He'd rescued a beautiful alien aristocrat who, by all rights, should want nothing to do with him. The smart thing would be to drop her somewhere safe and walk away. But as they made their way through the neon-lit streets, her hand resting lightly on his arm, Dane knew he was already in too deep to walk away now. Dane's apartment occupied a forgotten corner of the station's mid-level residential sector, squeezed between a Krillian noodle shop and a repair depot that never seemed to close. The door required both a key code and a palm scan, security measures that raised Vesha's elegant eyebrows as they finally stepped inside. "Paranoid much?" she asked, leaning heavily against the wall. "Cautious," Dane corrected, sealing the door behind them. "There's a difference." The interior was sparse, but clean, a single room divided by function rather than walls. A bed occupied one corner, a small kitchenette another, and what passed for a living area contained a worn couch and a view screen that had seen better days. Everything was meticulously organized, a habit from his military years that he'd never quite shaken. Pesha took in her surroundings with barely concealed dismay. "This is cozy." "It's honest," Dane said, guiding her to the couch. "Sit. Let me check that wound again." She sank onto the cushions with a grace that made even exhaustion look elegant. The torn gown spread around her like spilled wine, the silver threading catching the soft overhead lights. Dane tried not to notice how the fabric draped across her curves, how her violet skin seemed to shimmer with its own inner light. Focus. Merrick. He knelt beside the couch, examining the sealed wound. Some bleeding had seeped through during their walk, staining the silver fabric darker. "I need to clean this properly." "The seal's holding, but infection is still a risk." "I thought you said you weren't a medic," Desha said, watching him with those unsettling amber eyes. "I'm not, but I've patched up enough injuries to know the basics." He retrieved his medkit and a clean cloth. "This means I'll need to. Well, the gown has to come off. At least partially." Her crystalline markings flared bright violet. "Absolutely not. Then the wound gets infected, and you get to explain to your family how you died of blood poisoning because you were too proud to let someone help you." Dane sat back on his heels. "Look, I get it. Your culture has rules about contact. But right now, those rules might kill you." Desha was silent for a long moment, conflict playing across her features. Finally, she let out a breath that sounded almost like a laugh. "You have a terrible bedside manner." "Never claimed otherwise." He waited, letting her make the choice. "Turn around," she said quietly. I'll do it myself. Just tell me what needs to be done." Dane turned his back, talking her through the process of cleaning and resealing the wound. He heard the rustle of fabric, her sharp intake of breath, the soft sounds of her following his instructions. It took every ounce of his discipline not to turn around, not to help when he heard her struggle. "Done," she finally said, her voice tight with pain. "You can look now." He turned to find her wrapped in the blanket from his bed, the ruined gown puddled on the floor. Even disheveled and hurt, she was breathtaking. The blanket had slipped slightly, revealing the graceful curve of her shoulder and the top of her crystalline markings that traced down her collarbone. "You did good," Dane said, forcing himself to focus on the wound. The seal looked clean, professional even. Better than most field medics I've worked with. "Valerian children are taught basic medical care," Desha explained, "though usually not while hiding in strange men's apartments. There's a first time for everything." Dane stood, putting some distance between them. "You should rest. I'll take the couch. This is your couch. And you're the one who got stabbed. I've slept in worse places." He moved to the kitchenette, pulling out supplies for tea. "Hungry?" "I couldn't possibly impose further. That's not an answer." He set water to boil, rummaging through his limited supplies. "I've got ration bars, some actual fruit I picked up last week, and, let's see, instant noodles in about 6 different flavors." Despite herself, Desha smiled. "Such luxury. Mock all you want, Your Grace, but my noodle game's legendary." He found a packet of Valerian blend tea, something he'd bought months ago for a passenger who'd never shown up. "How do you take your tea?" "You have Valerian tea?" She sounded genuinely surprised. "Freight pilot." "You pick things up." He prepared 2 cups, adding the pinch of sweetener he'd seen Valerian traders use. When he brought them over, she accepted hers with both hands, the blanket slipping again. Their fingers brushed as he released the cup, and that same jolt of electricity sparked between them. This time, neither pulled away immediately. "Why are you helping me?" Vesha asked softly, looking up at him. "You could have left me in that alley. You could have called station security and walked away. Instead, you've put yourself at risk for someone who was quite rude to you." Dane settled into the chair across from her. "Because it was the right thing to do. Besides, you weren't rude. Just scared. I wasn't scared." The protest came automatically, then her shoulders sagged. "That's not true. I was terrified. House Volmer has been pushing for months, using every legal loophole to claim our nebula holdings. Tonight was the first time they've resorted to violence." "Tell me about it," Dane said. "The whole situation, I mean. If I'm going to help you, I need to understand what we're up against." Vesha sipped her tea, gathering her thoughts. "The Tessera Nebula contains rare crystalline formations that are essential for faster-than-light navigation. My family has held the mining rights for 3 generations. House Volmer wants those rights, claiming that my father's original contract was invalid due to some obscure technicality." "Is it?" "Invalid, I mean. No." Her eyes flashed. "My father is many things, but he's not careless with legal matters. Volmir's claims are fabricated, but they have friends in the magistrate's office. Friends who are willing to look the other way while they try more. Direct methods of persuasion, like kidnapping you. Or worse." She set down her cup with trembling hands. "I came to this summit hoping to find allies, other houses who would speak against Volmir's aggression. Instead, I found myself isolated. It seems everyone is either too afraid or too corrupted to stand against them." Dane leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "What about your family? Can't they send protection? My brother Castor is managing our holdings in the nebula. My younger sister Marina is only 16, still in academy. And my father—" She paused, pain flickering across her face. "My father is dying. Some wasting illness the physicians can't cure. House Volmer knows this. They're counting on it. I'm sorry." The words felt inadequate, but they were sincere. "Don't be. Death comes for us all eventually." She pulled the blanket tighter. "What I don't understand is why you care. You're human. This is Valerian politics. It doesn't concern you. You're wrong." Dane stood, moving to the window that looked out over the station's interior. "I spent 10 years in the Coalition Navy. You know what I learned? Bullies are the same everywhere, whether they're pirates raiding colonies or noble houses crushing their rivals. Someone has to stand up to them. And you've appointed yourself that someone?" There was no mockery in her voice, only curiosity. "Someone has to." He turned back to face her. "Besides, I might have some information that could help." Her eyes widened. "What kind of information?" "A few months back, I ran a cargo job for a Valerian merchant. Legitimate stuff, but he paid way over the standard rate for discretion. Wouldn't stop talking once we were underway, going on about how House Volmer was making deals with some Terran corporation. Something about joint mining operations." Vesha sat up straighter, wincing at the movement. "That's impossible. Valerian law prohibits alien ownership of nebula mining rights. If Volmer has made such deals, then their claims about wanting the nebula for themselves are a lie." Dane crossed back to her. "They're planning to sell your family's holdings to humans while publicly condemning your house for even considering such things. The hypocrisy is stunning, even for Volmer." Vesha's mind was clearly racing. "If we could prove this, present it to the magistrate ... They'd have no choice but to reject Volmir's claims," Dane finished. "Problem is, I don't have proof. Just the drunken boasting of a merchant who probably shouldn't have been talking. Then we find proof. Her determination was fierce, transforming her from frightened victim to something far more dangerous. You said you were a freight pilot. You must have contacts, people who move in circles where information flows. A few. Dane couldn't help but smile at her sudden intensity. Though reaching out might draw attention we don't want. I'll risk it. She stood, letting the blanket fall away before remembering her state of undress and quickly wrapping it back around herself. The brief glimpse of violet skin marked with crystalline patterns would haunt Dane's dreams for weeks. If we can expose Volmir's corruption, we save my family's holdings and prevent them from victimizing others. We? Dane raised an eyebrow. Your Grace, a few hours ago, you didn't even want me touching you to treat a wound. Desha's markings flared again, but this time with something other than embarrassment. A few hours ago, I was a fool clinging to prejudices I'd never questioned. You saved my life, brought me to safety, and treated me with more respect than most Galarian nobles would show their own servants. I think I owe you an apology. You don't owe me anything. I do. She moved closer, the blanket trailing behind her like a royal cloak. Everything I was taught about humans, about how contact with your species would be revolting. It was all lies. When you touch me, I don't feel disgust. I feel. She trailed off, seeming to struggle with the words. Feel what? Dane's voice came out rougher than he intended. Safe, she whispered. Alive. Things I haven't felt in years. She reached out, her hand hovering near his. May I? It was such a simple question, but it held the weight of worlds. Dane knew that if he took her hand now, everything would change. There would be no going back to simple rescue and separation. But looking into her amber eyes, seeing the hope and fear and something deeper reflected there, he knew his answer. He took her hand. The contact was electric, sending warmth flooding through both of them. Desha's crystalline markings began to glow softly, pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat. Dane had never seen anything so beautiful. Is this ... normal? He asked, gesturing to the glowing patterns. No. She stared at their joined hands in wonder. This only happens when there's a deep connection, a resonance between souls. Her eyes met his, wide with realization. This shouldn't be possible between our species. Maybe your people have been wrong about more than just humans being revolting. A laugh bubbled out of her, genuine and unguarded. Maybe we have. She squeezed his hand gently. Thank you, Dane Merrick, for saving me, for seeing me as more than just a title, for this. Before he could respond, a sharp knock at the door shattered the moment. They both froze, hands still intertwined. Dane? A voice called from outside. It's Roland. I know you're in there, and I know you're not alone. We need to talk. Desha gasped. That's Roland Kess, my family's retainer. How did he find me? Dane released her hand reluctantly, moving to the door's security panel. The view screen showed an elderly Valerian man in formal house livery, his expression grave. He was alone, but that didn't mean much. Could be a trap, Dane said. Roland has served my family for 40 years. He wouldn't betray me. But uncertainty colored her voice. The knock came again, more insistent. My lady, please? I've come alone, and I bear urgent news. House Volmer has escalated their plans. If we don't act soon, there may be no family left to save. Desha and Dane exchanged a long look. Finally, she nodded. Let him in, she said. Whatever comes next, we'll face it together. Dane keyed open the door, his hand near his weapon. The elderly Valerian stepped inside, his eyes finding Desha immediately. He took in her state of undress, the wound, and the human standing protectively beside her. Something like satisfaction crossed his lined face. So, Roland said, his voice gentle but knowing. It's already begun. What has? Vesha demanded. The old retainer smiled sadly. The bond, my lady. I'd wondered if the old stories were true, if Valerians could truly resonate with other species. It seems your mother was right. The heart knows no boundaries, only truth. Dane and Vesha looked at each other, the implications hanging heavy in the air between them. Whatever was happening between them, it was more than just attraction. It was something ancient, powerful, and potentially dangerous. Tell us everything, Dane said, closing the door behind Roland. If we're going to survive this, we need to know what we're really up against. The old Valerian nodded, settling into the chair with a weary sigh. Then prepare yourselves. The truth is far stranger and far more dangerous than either of you can imagine.